Now the idea of the project came around when I started teaching here in 2018-19, and none of the teachers knew anything about the history of school. If you asked the students, no one knew the school burnt in 1987. And I thought that we needed to document the history of Four Oaks education. Back to 1907 when the Sand Hill School was built. And then when the first major building on the campus that where the elementary school is now in 1923 was built, and the schools were consolidated. And if we do not document the history of Four Oaks schools, it's going to be forgotten. So the idea to turn our gym lobby into almost like a museum, documenting the history of the school with a timeline to remind current residents and students of things that we experienced and things that came before us, but also for the new families that move into our community to learn about the history and the significance of Four Oaks education.
I'm Michael Stevenson. I was at Four Oaks for 28 years as a teacher and an assistant principal. During my career, one of the most interesting things was coming back my first year as a teacher, and the vast majority of the people that were teachers at the school were my former teachers. So that was really, really interesting. And Linwood McClam was my former PE teacher and football coach, and we became very close. It was also very interesting over the years to have former students' children. That was something that I always thought was really neat. A kid I may have had in 1990 and in 2003, their child's in middle school, and I just always really thought that was kind of cool. And I think all the teachers here did, because we had a group of teachers that stayed for many, many years. And it was just one of the interesting things about being at his school for your whole career. You see kids grow up and then you have their kids, which was probably one of the most fascinating things to me. And the relationships I made with all the people that I worked with. I always called it our Four Oaks family. It wasn't just a job. It was a lot of people that you really built relationships with and enjoyed being around them rather than just people you worked with.
Kind of interesting. I went to Four Oaks, and John Floyd was the principal. And what kind of caught my eye with Mr. Floyd was in the summertime. The custodians were cleaning up and everything, and Mr. Floyd was grilling hamburgers and hot dogs for the custodians at lunch, and made me sit there and eat with them during the interview, which is kind of, I was like, well, this is kind of family. It's kind of, and he said, can you coach football? I said, well, I played football. I think I can help coach. He's like, no, we need a head football coach. Can you coach? Well, sure I can.
I've learned to pay attention to students as a teacher and as a principal, and look at everything that we did through the eyes of kids, through the eyes of students. And every week we would ask our students, what has worked well for your learning this week? What didn't work so well for it that we could improve upon next week? And teaching our kids the important skills of recognizing that you don't have to be perfect. When I get down to my last thoughts as a principal, my last few years, I would be there at midnight often. I'd look out the windows at the houses of people I knew, and I was not afraid a bit, because I was in my own community, in my school, and I was safe. So I felt comfortable staying there and working and organizing and finishing up things that I didn't get finished during the day, and I was very satisfied that I could accomplish that and still feel safe in my school.
Principal, Mr. Hatcher, he became ill and he died. And the day that he died, we were told, because we were in the lower grades, that when we walked over to the bus that we were not to speak and that we were to show reverence. And nobody, the whole kids and the teachers were walking along beside of us. So back in those times, what I took from that was, you know, outside of your home and outside of your church and at school, the teachers prepared us, you know, to do the things that you should in your community.
The desks did better than the rest of the Four Oaks School. Virtually everything else was destroyed in the Christmas Day fire.
Johnston County officials say some students at the Four Oaks campus will be moved to other buildings, and some will have to attend classes at the Meadows School about 10 miles away. Johnston County officials say some good may come out of the fire, though. It could mean bond money for some much-needed school improvement.
The night that the fire was, that the school burned, to give you some sense of how important that school was to the community as a whole. That was on Christmas night. So you can imagine everyone had come back to their families, and everyone that lived in town had gathered in town, and it was Christmas night, and it was late in Christmas night, and I had walked across to some family members' houses, and I left that house and I came out and it was a little bit foggy and I smelled smoke in the air, and I went back. We were three houses down from the school, and I went back inside and said, something's burning. And then we all went outside, and it was a school, and just in flames. And because the school was made out of heart pine and it was set in multiple spots, it was no time before the school was fully engulfed in flame. So everyone in town that had gathered back in town for the Christmas holiday wound up going to the school, and there was just literally throngs of people up there watching that school and telling stories about the school. And really the community was brought together then, and then it's just something that was the biggest event if you ever went to that school. Pretty much every year there were some memorable events. And I remember being sick one day, not feeling well, and they sent me from the 4th grade. Right across the hall there was a storage room in there with boxes and books and tables and whatever, but there was a cot in there. And so Miss Hill put me in the sick room to lie down, but then she forgot me. And so I woke up and the school was out, and I remember I walked to my sister's house because my sister lived in town, so I missed the bus, but I walked home. So that's where our sick room was.
Some of the elementary stuff, we had a rhythm band. I went into that. In the elementary department, we had rhythm bands and chorus. I didn't get into that. I was not an actor or a singer, so I didn't get into that. I played basketball and baseball because we didn't have a large team because we were really a small school. We really were small when they changed us over. Now, some of the people that were involved were in the basketball stuff. I'm not trying to sit here and tell you that I was the greatest player there, but as I played along, now when growing up, I'd run from a basketball. Then they built us a gym, and we started having to go to the gym to do PT, and I got hooked on basketball, and I went wild.
In the 10th grade, I was in biology class, Miss Dorothy Johnson from Smithfield Biology, and Mr. Baker came over the intercom. I was in 10th grade biology class, and Mr. Baker says, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Daryl Rayner was driving back from lunch today, and he came to the office to report that he heard on his radio that President John F. Kennedy has been shot. And I remember some of the girls in the classes started crying. And you can imagine we had never heard anything like that before. And within the hour, he came back on the intercom and says, "We've just got word that President Kennedy has died."
My first few years here, the trailers moved. We were in trailers, and then we were in the old schoolhouse that was, and it's kind of funny, the one wall in my room, I was really worried about it, and they finally came to, I thought the chalkboard was going to fall over. So they put 2x4s, braced that chalkboard up. I mean, the building was deteriorating. And I just think that the whole project is great. Me coming in from Ohio, I didn't know the whole history of Four Oaks schools. I knew since the school burnt, but looking at that wall and seeing what was here before and learning is just fascinating to me. And I think it needs to be preserved.
If we don't keep this history, I mean, I have grandkids. I'd like for them to know the history of Four Oaks School. And it was reputed to be, at one time, the largest rural consolidated school in the world.
My last words, if we want to do a good job, a better job, an outstanding job of educating our children, then we have to take the time to look at their learning and their lives through their eyes.